also possible. So the only guidelines on this would be to try to keep your remarks, remembering how many people are on, to keep them about 2 to 3 minutes, remarks or questions, so that we're able to involve as many people as possible. And as I say, we'll try and see how dialogue works. If you want to respond to something that someone else has said, put it on the chat, and if I'm not noticing it on the chat, wave your arms. And if you're on the page, there are now, even with a full screen, there are 2 pages of people now, so it makes it a little hard. I can't see everybody. So anybody want to start out? Or is this? Linda, did you want to say something? You, at one point you had asked.
I guess I just wanted to introduce myself and let people know what I do and my interest in being a participant. And just to let people know, I am a travel advisor. I have been going to Cuba since 2016. I take small groups to Cuba, 10, and I do tours. And usually we travel about 600 miles. I have a Cuba guide. We stay in Casa Particulars, and I help support the Cuban people. I've been there 9 times, and Cuba has become my passion. So with that, I let somebody else.
Okay, and Linda, I think one of the things that's very specific about what you do is you're aiming at people who are retired specifically. And
correct.
And you're trying to find projects that engage them. So
exactly.
Now, if people want to be able to be in touch with each other, they can put on the chat. You can send a chat directly to somebody else, I think. It turns out you can't do it on a webinar, but you can chat directly to somebody and send them your email coordinates, or you can, or ask for theirs, or you can put it on to everyone and then everyone will have it. So everybody's welcome to do that. And yes, somebody asked about being the only Cuban. I guess there are about half a dozen people of Cuban ancestry on the group. Okay, so where did I lose the person that wanted to speak? Oh, Daniel, are you raising your? Okay, then I will unmute you right now. There. Okay, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Dan Waltz. I'm with the law firm Squire Patton Boggs. We've been active on the Cuban embargo and Cuban travel issue for many, many years. I just wanted to speak briefly to what it means that Cuba has been added to the state sponsors of terrorism list. And I think for the travel industry, the answer is very little. I'm sorry, my phone is ringing.
Inevitably. If you have a dog, the dog will come now too. That's
exactly. Hopefully they won't leave a message. As John pointed out, the current Cuba restrictions and the early relaxation after the Obama administration announced that it was adopting a new policy towards Cuba were all adopted when Cuba was on the state sponsors of terrorism list. Addition to that list impacts primarily US government actions and policies. And it is a reputational hit to Cuba, which likely will make it harder to attract investors. It may make it harder for it to affect payments and receive payments. But I don't see that addition to the list as impacting travel to Cuba. And certainly we all expect and hope that perhaps the Biden administration in the fullness of time will revisit some of those restrictions that have been imposed by the Trump administration.
Thank you. And you're not getting through your legal channels any hint about when they're going to move, are you?
I have a partner working with the transition team on Cuba policy. I haven't talked to her about timing. Frankly, given the priorities that confront the incoming Biden administration, I'd be surprised if this makes it on the agenda for the first 100 days.
Yeah.
I mean, when you think about the coronavirus, the need for additional economic stimulus, I mean, I feel very strongly about the Cuba issue, but we have to be realistic here in terms of just how high a priority it'll take in the Trump administration. I'm sorry, the Biden administration.
Right. Right. I want to be slightly more optimistic, as probably congenitally so. And I've written before, and I would say that there's now a new reason, which is the state sponsor listing thing, which was overtly intended to cut their legs out from under them, or at least put them in a psychological or political box. And one of the ways they could respond to that is to say, you know, they don't have to roll things out. That may require some bureaucracy, but they could announce they're going to roll things out. And the other thing is, if I've referenced at several points the article in the New York Times, the op-ed by the head of the International Crisis Group, who, as it happens, was a friend of the new Secretary of State since high school together in Paris, and who has a board member of his just left the board because he's becoming the national security advisor. So I would assume that he has some, and he's listed in the Times article as an advisor to Biden. He talks about ripe fruit and cites resuming Obama's Cuba policies as something that would be simple, popular, and symbolically important. So I don't know whether he was just talking for himself or not. I've probably given him a lot more attention than he may have even necessarily wanted, because we've quoted him on the petition. But any rate, that's, somebody did ask in the whether Bill Richardson was going to be working on it. That's the first I've heard about that. And it would certainly be interesting if Bill were back in the picture, but I just don't know whether he was active in the Biden campaign and has a personal relationship with Biden or any of the people that have been designated. The guy who is doing, well, Bill Leogrand is on. Bill, do you have any thing that you can add in this? Let me see if I can find you in the in this list, because Bill, as you remember from the last session, monitors this all very closely. So I just lost you off of my screen. So if I can find you again. Well, I'm not finding him. All right, there's a way. Well, I'm not finding him, so maybe it was a moment that he's trying to get it. There he is. Okay, so let me unmute him and see if he has anything to add on the policy front. Bill, do you hear me?
Yes, after all that, I'm not sure I have anything too much to add, in all honesty. I do think that this business, though, with the terrorism list may actually spur the new administration to want to move on Cuba a little faster than it might otherwise. The other thing is that the Summit of the Americas is scheduled, at least for later this year. Could get postponed again because of COVID, but that's really going to be a decision-forcing event. The administration is going to have to figure out what its Cuba policy is, what its Venezuela policy is, and what its Latin American policy is before it goes into that summit. We're the host, so we have to decide whether we're going to invite Cuba and who we're going to invite as the government of Venezuela. So there's a lot of analysis that the administration is going to have to focus on really pretty quickly. So key thing to watch, I think, is who's the new Assistant Secretary for Western Hemisphere.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I started to say the guy who is Western Hemisphere in the National Security Council was apparently not involved in the Obama-Cuba stuff, although he traveled several times with Biden on his vice presidential trips. And I'm told he's a good guy, but it's not been his area. He's a Colombian American. He came at age 7. So, Bill, do you know anything about him? Have you ever worked with him?
So yeah, so Juan Gonzalez he's actually very close to the vice president, or the former vice president, to the president-elect. He was his Latin America person for quite a while, as a matter of fact, and he was prominent as a public voice of the campaign on Latin American issues. He did a long session at the Woodrow Wilson Center Latin America program, if you want to look it up, talked about the whole range of issues, but he was relatively reluctant to say too much about Cuba and did not, he was a bit more conservative than candidate Biden himself was on the campaign trail about Cuba. So I think my sense is, my personal assessment is that he is more interested in other Latin American issues than he is in Cuba.
Yeah. And yeah, he's going to do what they decide higher up.
Sure, but well, yes. So yes and no. One of the things you have to keep in mind is precisely because the principals are going to have so many other much bigger issues on their plate that a lot of policy towards Latin America is likely to be, for all intents and purposes, decided at mid-level positions, which is why, as I say, I think who's at state doing Latin America is going to be really important.
Okay. I just checked the box which allows you to unmute yourself. So, because it obviously was such a big group, it's hard to find people. So you now have the option of unmuting yourself if I haven't seen a chat from you, or so, and I keep looking for the person who had asked.
I think
Go
that
ahead.
was me, John. So John, hi, this is Ed Russo and I live in
Yes.
Key West. You should all be jealous. It's fabulous down here.
Almost
we
Cuba.
almost there, right? I'm just a few miles off. I've been to Cuba many times through my environmental work that I had hoped to complete in Cuba, but never did. I'm president of the Florida Keys Environmental Coalition. I'm on the board of Reef Relief, and our reefs in around this part of the world are in terrible peril. 90% of them have been bleached out, but in Cuba, the corals are just healthy and they sing back to each other and they're all having fun, and we can't figure out why. And what I was interested in is going over there and taking water quality samples and testing them back and forth, because what's ever in the water here that's not in the water there, we now have an end game to do the right thing. I'm an American citizen. I live in the state of Florida. I live in Key West. I should have the right to travel anywhere I want, do business with anyone I want. This is absurd. I know I hear this stuff, well, we may not be able to get this for the first 100 days. This is an absurdity that has to be changed. They're on some list. Well, yeah, that'd be fine if we had a worldwide list of all the countries and specific standards for this particular definition. So all the countries that fall above or below, however you look at it, Cuba should also be put in this position, but that's not the case. They're being singled out. We all know it. I've just had it. I have a lot of friends in Cuba. A lot of good environmental people in Cuba. They live it every day. And so just for the people that have a lot more influence than me, move faster, move more aggressively. This is an absurd bit of action, especially on Pompeo. That makes no sense to me whatsoever. I'm an American citizen. Somebody has to tell me why I can't take my boat across the straits. It just makes no sense to me whatsoever. Linda, I've gone over dozens of times, and whenever you want to take me, please do. Somehow you have to contact me and I'll contact you. But my wife and I love Cuba. We love the Cuban people. There's arrogance on both sides. I get it. There's stupidity on both sides. I get it. But this action against Cuba never made any sense to me, and it certainly doesn't make sense to anybody in Key West.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
What we will do, we will post the chat afterwards, and you'll find the link to it in that blog page that we have set up for this program. And then you can, so if people put their addresses on, also, though I don't want to get into too much of it, if there's someone specific you're trying to locate, send me a note and I will send them a note that you're trying to reach them. And then that dialogue directly can continue. So I noticed that Rita has come on from Havana. I assume she's still in Havana. Rita, do you have anything to update folks on?
Sorry. Hi. I wasn't sure that it was going to work. I'm using my data. So we went into we went into another lockdown again today in Havana. Well, it technically starts tomorrow. So the COVID situation has gotten a little bit worse here. But so and as far as like flights in and out at the moment, they've made a huge reduction in flights in and out for the purpose of tourism. There is still some tourism happening in Veradero. And I've been seeing some tourists around Old Havana and Central Havana at the moment, but very few people around in general. And schools are going to start to close tomorrow again. Local public transportation is closing again. So it looks like we'll be in this for a few more weeks.
And how close are they to their own vaccine?
I spoke with some doctors who are involved yesterday, actually, and they said that it looks like the earliest would be the end of February, March, when they'd start distributing it to the general public.
Yeah. Okay. So if anybody has any questions specifically for Bill or for Rita, you should certainly unmute yourself and ask them.
Hi, John. This is Lori at Holbrook Travel.
Hi.
I guess the question is probably for Rita for the most part, if you know the answer to this. But now that the U.S. has further complicated travel, but for healthy reasons, for the right reasons probably, and requiring vaccines 3 days before return, what would be the situation for in Cuba facilities to make that happen?
So I think you're referring to the PCR test. That's no issue, especially if which you will be, you'll be returning from Havana. There are international facilities here specifically for tourists, and you can get the PCR test within 72 hours of your departure. So there's no problem on that end from here.
Thank you.
Where do people get the, Rita, where do people get the PCR test? What's the?
So there's two international clinics that are doing them for tourists. The Siboney International Clinic, which is about 20 minutes by car from downtown Havana, and then the Camilo Cienfuegos Clinic, which is on the other side of Havana as well. And they're really, like, I've done it twice already. I got them back in less than 24 hours. You get the paper, it's all official, and the airlines accept it. It's
Okay. And it costs $30, is that the?
It costs about, I think they changed it to 32 or something now. And you can actually use your American credit card to pay for it.
Oh.
And you have to use your American credit card to pay for it.
How on earth did they manage that?
I don't know.
Okay, well, that's an interesting bit of incidental intelligence. Did somebody else start to ask something?
Yeah. John, hi, this is Cynthia Carasalonso. Hi, Rita. I was wondering, where is Cuba getting the vaccine from? Are they going to be administering their own, or from China or Russia?
So from what I've read and from what I've heard from some doctor friends and whatnot, they are getting some of the basic materials from between Russia and China, but they're producing for here, on the ground here. One variation is a nasal spray that they've have in final tests at the moment as well. But I believe 2 of the 4 vaccines are already in the final trials. And again, it will be February, end of February, beginning of March before they'll actually start administering them to the general population.
Thank you.
I have a follow-up question regarding Cuba's entry requirements, if you don't mind. I know now they're saying we must have the PCR test before 72 hours before arrival, but it's still saying that you'll still also get one upon arrival, and you have to isolate until that comes in. And then there's places also where it's talking about 5 days later, a third test. Is that all still accurate, or does anyone have definitive information about that?
So you do need the test 72 hours prior to arrival, and it has to be a PCR test. The airline on the US side will be verifying that. So they won't let you board the plane unless you have the PCR result within 72 hours of departure. And then as far as when you arrive here, you will receive one more test, a PCR test in the airport. That's included, the cost of that flight, of that test is included in your ticket price. You get the results back. And that's the only other test you have to do. You don't have to do anything on the 5th day. If you are a Cuban national and you're coming back to visit family and you have a Cuban passport, then you have to take another test on the 5th day.
Okay, I had read that somewhere, but other places it wasn't clarifying that, so I appreciate that.
Yeah. But it's very clear from the responses and the registration that a lot of people are hoping to get back into Cuba by the spring or summer. And, so this factor of COVID here and there also was, if you looked at what people were preoccupied with, there were 2 things. One was COVID, and the second was having clarity on the regulations. Both of them are obviously out of our control. Was somebody else trying to get recognized?
I understand that you need to be quarantined for 24 hours after arrival at your hotel. Is that correct?
So if you're staying at a hotel, the quarantine is 24 hours. You have to stay inside the hotel perimeter for 24 hours. If you are staying in a casa particular, it's up to 2 days, they're saying. And that is until you have the visit from the local doctor and they bring you your results from the airport test.
So I had, sorry, one question may not be relevant. I was having, sorry, this is Andrea from Holbrook, and I had passengers who were going to be traveling towards the end of February, and that's now no longer going to happen. But when they are quarantining at a casa particular until they receive the results back, which I understand can take 24 to 48 hours, what is the protocol in terms of their ability to, you know, access meals? Can they, you know, are they literally confined to the building, or can they walk around the malecon? So how does that work?
So it's kind of, there's no like very strict outline of this. You are not like locked in the house. You're kind of advised to do a self quarantine. So if you wanted to go for a walk on the Malecon, you could go for a walk on the Malecon. But also that depends on how liberal the house owner is. There's some people here right now. They were able to leave, no problem, and walk around and whatnot. The owner of the house will probably be able to get you meals in. There's great delivery service. I just ordered a bunch of pizzas from a app service called Mendao now, where there's like 27 restaurants in Havana listed, and they're at your house in an hour. You can actually even pay from the US with your US credit card if you want to send it to some of your friends in Cuba. And so there are tons of options. There's tons of delivery service available. Anyone in the house would be able to also arrange home cooked meals and things like that. So you will have access to food and whatnot.
Sure. Thanks, Rita.
It actually might be helpful if you, Rita, if you or if somebody who's making coherent these restaurants that are offering delivery with a charge in the US, you know, we could send that around to people. It's you know, at this point with Western Union not operational, about the only way you're able to help friends is with the phone credit. So, you know, for special events or occasions, maybe some people in the US would like to surprise their friends.
It's a really nice option, and I know a lot of people were using it like in the height of the pandemic when food was really hard to come by here. You can even order from local farms. They prepare little baskets of vegetable and fruit and yogurts and things like that. So there's a few options. I can add that into the chat here.
Okay, that would
Great,
be
with the
great.
name of it, that'd be great.
What happens if you have the vaccine? Oh, I'm sorry, I'm delayed. What happens if you have the vaccine? What restrictions do you have entering the country? Anybody?
You're muted, Rita.
Rita, did you hear that question? You've become the go-to now on all health related.
I'm so sorry. There was a lot of.
Oh, the question is, if once people get the vaccine, how is this going to be handled? Are they still going to need to do the PCR tests? Will certification of vaccination, the 2 steps of vaccination?
They haven't outlined that at all yet. They haven't addressed that question at all yet.
Yeah, the U.S. as far the U.S. on the return things, they said if you have the vaccine, it doesn't matter. You still have to have the PCR test, but if you've been positive for 3 months, you don't have to. So to come back into the U.S. anyway. So that's it. So I don't know. It's weird.
Yeah, I mean, there's not that any of us are going to get the vaccine very soon. I mean, I'm now in the 1B category, but finding an appointment
you're lucky.
Do it is almost impossible. So, Magali, you have a question.
Yeah. Did you unmute us?
You're unmuted. Everybody can unmute themselves now.
Okay.
Yeah, I am Cuban and American also here, left by Mariel 1980. So I go very often to Cuba. I have all my family there. Right now, we both, my husband and I, got vaccinated, and we'll have the second dosage before going back to Cuba. So we are very interested to know, you have the 2 vaccination. I guess you answered, right? You still have to have the PCRs and all those tests.
I think that I think it's just going to have to wait a few weeks to see how they decide to handle that. From what was said before, it's not clear whether the US is accepting people's vaccination evidence to waive a PCR or whether the Cubans will. So I think it's just too early in the process to have a definite answer. Somebody else.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, I have a question on on remittances, and that was.
Identify yourself, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I'm Zita Rocha, and I live in southern New Mexico. I taught at the University of Texas, El Paso for 20 years and have taken several groups of students to Cuba, but I'm also Cuban born. And my family left when I was 4 years old. And my question is about remittances, because I've been supporting my family there in a small village of Huira de Melena. And every legal avenue has now been closed off to be able to send money legally to family there. And, the whole thing with, and of course, they're going through this huge change in their own financial system at the same time. So I'm wanting to know if anybody is working on this with the Biden administration, and if there is any way other than actually going there in person and giving the money, cash, to be able to help family.
I sent money, by the way, through a Canadian company a few months ago. So I'm happy to get you guys the information. You can send money.
Do you want to identify yourself, the person that just said that?
Oh, hi, I'm Evan Elkowitz. I run a fashion and arts tour to Cuba. I've been to Cuba like 17 times and I've run 3 tours. And
do you and Rita know each other?
No. Hi, how are you? I'm from
it's the same line that Rita comes from. You need to.
That's true. Definitely. Next time you're in Cuba, we can get together.
Oh yeah, we should definitely meet. I'll be there. I'm supposed to be there next Saturday.
Oh.
23rd.
I'll send you a message.
Yeah, message me. So I've hosted 2 large fashion shows in Havana. I support all the designers there, and I protect them just to make sure that they don't get exploited. And I work and I show Americans just, what I see in Cuba. I take them to visit with artists. I host events at artist homes. I write a column for Startup Cuba. So I just can't wait to get back there. I'm just concerned that you have to sit in your casa and wait for the doctor to show up. Is that how it goes after the PCR?
Yes. So basically, if you know the casa that you're going to, and you can contact them ahead of time, ask them to get in touch with the doctor's office, that can kind of push it along a little bit faster. The other thing that you can do, which is something I actually did when I just recently came back, was I just went on my first day and I got a test at the international clinic, and I had it in 24 hours. And then I went to the local doctor's office and handed it in.
So you can you opt not to do it then at the airport, or you have to do both?
You have to do both. But that will just speed up the process. I think the last couple of weeks has been so intense because there was such an influx when it first opened. So it delayed a lot of the results getting to the local doctor's office. So they weren't adhere to the 48-hour window in many cases. But with the reduction in flights, I think it will be a little bit more reasonable and easily achieved. But at the same time, if you don't want to delay, you can go and you have that option to go and do it yourself and bring in the results.
Will you message me, because I want to find out where I go. I don't want to bother everybody with take up the time.
Okay.
Do you mind? Do you mind?
Hi, hi, it's David Lee with Cultural Cuba. I just want to add something to this about the timing of the results and how long you have to stay put. I've been back to Cuba now twice since the airport reopened, and I have you know, some close relationships with people pretty high up within that department of the government. And from what, and this is not official because they have not listed this officially yet, so I do want to make that clear. But what I was told is that they don't have the capacity, the staff right now and the organization to notify every single person who tests negative within the 24-hour period of time, or within even beyond 24 hours. Therefore, and this is not, again, I have to reiterate, it's not going to be listed in writing anywhere. If you stay within your casa or your hotel and no one contacts you within 24 hours to tell you you're negative, what I was told, and I'm not the only one who's been told this, is that after 24 hours, you are now free to, you know, leave the premises because you are negative. They're only contacting people for the most part who are positive as quickly as possible. And then you'll literally be visited, as Rita said, by, you know, the doctor in charge of that particular area that you're residing. So, because they know that otherwise, I mean, you can, I know people who have sat in a casa for 3 full days and never been contacted. And they were definitely negative. They took a negative test before they came. So, you know, if that was the case, I mean, obviously for all of us who are not just going to visit family, people who are coming as tourists, having to sit and wait that long, it's pretty much going to shut down the possibility of even visiting Cuba, especially if your trip is 4 days long and you might have to sit in your hotel or your casa for 3 days waiting for someone to tell you that you're negative. So again, that's been my personal experience and the personal experience of several other people I know that have traveled there. But
that was my experience. If I could jump in for a second, I went down in November. My name is Chris Clunan. I think I know a few of you here on the chat. I've been working in travel in Cuba for a while. I also write for Startup Cuba, but I went down there and nobody. I stayed in my casa for 2 days and no one came around to say I was negative. But I had heard the same thing. If you were positive, they'd be at your door instantly. So after 2 days, I felt like I was safe to walk around and be free. But it's also, there was no protocol for getting the day 5 test there. I ended up at the local clinic and then I was told that was a wrong place to go. So I ended up at the international clinic. But I was not able to pay with an American card or American cash there. I had to pay with a Cuban debit card provided by my host. So it just presented a lot of logistical challenges, you know, finding a place to stay and having a host provide food for you. And but definitely don't, what David said is accurate. They don't have the staffing to tell everyone you're negative.
Yeah. I think the 5-day Rita said is not operational at this point, just to go back to that. I wanted to come back a minute to the remittances question. My guess is that the minimum that we're going to see relatively quickly out of the Biden folks is the restoration of unlimited remittances, Western Union, and the other things that directly affect the Miami community. Even from some of our problem people like Kavalich, they're saying that that's going to happen quickly. I think the policy issues that we really have to be pressing on is the travel that affects everybody else, whether it's independent travel or specialized agents, as are on this, a lot of them on this call, that take small groups with very particular purposes. And technically can be doing that under the support for the Cuban people even before there's finally a new rollout or approval of restoration of the old regulations. On the question of of COVID is influencing the flight situation. The Cubans pulled back on the number of flights because they were being overwhelmed. Are tickets available, or is it, I know they, of course, the airlines jacked the prices up. I assume there's still, prices are up, but are there even seats available at this point?
Hi, I'm flying to, I made a reservation to fly next week. If you want to know, I'm flying through, from New York. You have to transfer on the way there. So I'm transferring in Fort Lauderdale.
Mm-hmm.
And then Fort Lauderdale, I'm going straight to Havana. But on the way back, JetBlue flies direct from Havana to New York.
So JetBlue has got its New York flight back up.
But only on Saturdays.
Only on
direct.
Saturdays, yeah.
Direct on the way, on the return. But on the way down, you have to transfer.
But did you have trouble getting the ticket, or were you able to get it easily?
I booked it online, simple.
So they, all right. And the prices were normal or escalated?
300, usual. Pretty usual.
Okay.
So John,
Go ahead, Andrea.
Yeah, this is Andrea from Holbrook again, and you may have covered this earlier. I missed an early part of the session, but given the new designation of Cuba as a state sponsor of terrorism, what, if any, impact does that have on the current categories of travel? I see Lori saying none, so I guess that was already covered, right?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, that's
okay.
Not. All of those categories had been approved when it was a state sponsor under Obama. So that part we're clear on. So,
thank you.
Though there's still obviously the underlying political question about how they respond to it. And we've not gotten any hint yet of the Biden people. They do have some preoccupations. Any rate, somebody else.
Yes, John.
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Riza Fernandez, and I am a Cuban American. I was born here. My parents came when they were very small. And so I live in Miami, and I've had to deal with the many years of the travel topic. And to me, it's a sad story that we, more than 50 years ago that my mom came from Cuba, that we're still dealing with the same issue of travel, of the embargo, of the politics of Cuba. And one of the things that I was just gonna mention to Zita, there's a travel agency from Miami. It's called Cuba Max, and they have an online portal where you can pay online to send remittance to your family to Cuba. So just if you want to look at that, there's a website. It's cubamax.com. And my mother has sent money to her family members. So for every $100 you send, they're charging $20.
Oh,
I don't know.
Even worse than Western Union.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's also a change in price of the dollar and the CUC that they're also going through in Cuba. So a lot of those things are affecting families over there and here that are helping out, and friends, right? And so I think another big loss that we had two big loss for elected representatives in the House of Representatives from Miami that were Democrats that, they tend to kind of, sometimes support the Cuba travels and issues like that. And we lost them. We lost them to the Republican Party, and they're very extreme. One is to Maria Elvira Salazar. She's a very extreme TV personality here. She made it to Congress. And so I think that one of the things that we also have to do is engaged. The community here in Miami was given a full-fledged socialist agenda marketing by the extreme right of Miami, and a lot of the Democrats, Cuban Democrats that were here, the young, voted very conservative this time around. And so I think that as a Cuban American here in Miami, I see it as a challenge to the new administration to really kind of do anything, just because they kind of lost some of those voters and that support this time around. And so we need to organize. We need to kind of come together as people that care about this issue, you know, to not only think that Cuban Americans are not for travel. There are many for travels, many to end the embargo, and many who need the support. And, you know, Miami politics plays a lot in our national politics towards Cuba. And we need to have an eye on that and stay together and try to work it out, you know?
Yeah.
So I'm glad I'm here. I'm glad that you're all interested. I love to see so many people from around our country to really engage with the Cuban people, and hopefully we can change the course of history, and not more than 60 years from now, because my mom said it, 60 years and we're still saying the same story for Cuba. So,
well, I think if you haven't read the Grenier analysis, which has shown up a number of places, including Progreso Semanal, I think his argument, he's the one who does the FIU poll every year or so. His argument is that if you actually looked down within the content of the poll, though people were voting for Trump, the numbers were in the 60% who opposed specifically all of the things that Trump had done on Cuba. And the Biden people, we talked about this in the last call, that the Biden people didn't make it a very high priority, and they basically let the arguments lie and didn't go after those contradictions. But the presumption is if they actually move quickly to address the issues of remittances and the consular facilities in Havana, so people can either do migration visas or family visit visas, and the regional flights, that may change the atmosphere. And then if the Cubans do what they say they're going to do in terms of opening up small and medium enterprise and greater ease of investment of foreigners, and I mean, including now 100% majority foreign ownership, that may begin to change the atmosphere as people find ways of getting involved. I mean, that's my hopeful interpretation of things, always hopeful, or why continue? Angelica, were you wanting to say something?
I was, John, but I didn't.
Go ahead. Introduce yourself. Yeah.
Hi, everyone. My name is Angelica Salazar. I put my intro in the chat, so I wouldn't take up too much of your times. But I was just very excited by what I heard from Braisa, and I've been private chatting with Zita and some others. I'm a member of the steering committee for ACERE, the Alliance for Engagement and Respect for Cuba. It's an ad hoc coalition. We have a growing list of right now 40 or so organizations that have signed on to our alliance to make bold and progressive push so that 2021 we actually see not just a rollback of what Trump has so brutally done in his administration and, you know, Obama, but even going forward in terms of policy changes, really pushing the Biden team. We have a letter that we've already submitted to several new transition members that are focused on Latin America. We've already sent them our Biden letter, and I'll drop that link in the chat. And we are working with members of Congress, specifically Bobby Rush and others, to do a Dear Colleagues Cite-On letter, so that this is a letter coming from members of Congress, the new Congress, to the Biden administration with some of the very things that we're talking about around remittances, travel, and eventually embargo. So, you know, we know that Washington works slow in an incremental system, but if we have a strong advocacy base, which, you know, many of you have been working on for a long time, especially if we can get the travel industry involved. And John's been working on that for decades in terms of pushing for advocacy, policy changes. This is the time. And so we invite all of you to join our alliance with TACERE, the Alliance for Engagement and Respect for Cuba, excuse me, the Alliance for Cuba Engagement and Respect, and a play off the word acere, commonly known in Cuba on the streets. And also I dropped the link for another campaign, which is more of a global movement campaign to nominate the Henry Reeve Brigade for their heroic work that they're doing during this pandemic all around the world. And so that's for the Nobel Peace Prize 2021. And we've gotten a number of US academics, scholars to nominate them for this year's Nobel Peace Prize. So those are two big campaigns that I mentioned. And I would love, I've recruited 2 of the 3 steering committee members that we have with TACERE that are Cuban American. So we welcome more so that we have, and we really uplift your voices in this one.
So Angela, are you in the US now or in Cuba?
I'm in the US, John.
Okay.
I came, just on a little back note, I've been based on the island for the last 5 years facilitating educational programs with the Martin Luther King Center and Casa de las Americas with US universities and US nonprofit organizations.
Somebody had asked what the status of the petition was, and I just checked, it's 1,279. So, you know, it's not quite viral, but it's certainly growing 200-300 a day. So that just focuses on what we want Biden to do immediately. My guess is the next increment is to get them to support the McGovern and Leahy legislation to end all travel restrictions. If that legislation goes through, then it makes it much easier for people who are on this call to organize trips just based on their own instinct rather than to try to make them fit within even the liberal licensing categories. But it also opens the resorts to all-inclusive vacation travel, weddings, and all of the normal Caribbean stuff, which to the commercial travel business is very important. And that's, once that door opens, then I think you've moved a good way along. And I think you'll also see the American hotel companies coming in and getting into joint ventures and management contracts and all the normal things that they do.
Hey, John.
Yeah.
This is Shayla Paz. Thank you so much, first of all, for putting this together. I'm so grateful for the invitation. Hello, everybody, and thank you for being here. And I am grateful to you all for being so passionate about our beloved islands. I grew up I was raised in Cuba. I've been here only 20 years, so I lived the 90s, el periodo especial when everything was so hard in Cuba. And I started my agency to travel to Cuba just to help the people in Cuba. And last year, no, actually it's been 2 years, John, since we met.
Yeah.
There was
the ASTA show, right?
We went to the ASTA Global Convention where we were pushing for the policy toward Cuba. And I actually went to Congress last year to a day at the Capitol. And I was able to talk to some of my congressmen to push the subject of Cuba. So if we all unite, like Raisa was saying, if we all press on this issue, we can get the change that we need. But we all need to put our heads together and invite people to sign that petition. So that's how things happen. So if we just say, we just write today and maybe tomorrow we just forget, we need to press on it every day. I used to write to President Obama all the time about the Cuba issue. And when he announced the relationship with Cuba again, I cried literally for 3 hours. I could not believe it. And I was one of the, and from Tennessee, I was the only Cuban journalist. And the only journalist from the state that traveled to Cuba with the president. So I was there when he spoke to the people, to the Cuban people from the Teatro Nacional, asking them to lift the embargo from Cuba, and also ask the Cuban people that they needed to do their parts themselves to promote change in the island. So I feel the same way. So we can do stuff here, but they can do stuff there to make everything work for all of us. And one more thing I wanted to say was about the vaccine. I know that Cuba was working on their own vaccine. I don't know if anybody had any update about that. They were doing some testing with the doctors and there, and I know that they were going to do some testing here in the US and Mexico. So if anybody had any information, that would be great. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Shayla. I there's the very exciting dimension to this. Was just remember the fact that this kind of cycle that's happened. Carter was the first opening, and a very tentative one, in part because the Cubans themselves still were of the tourism as a threat mindset. But things began to open with Carter, and that then got shut down by Reagan. And then came Clinton, and things became more active, even though Clinton's licensing process was a real pain in the ass for people to go through if they, but it did open some doors. Then came Obama, and Obama, things exploded, expanded at many, many different levels, including the role of Cuban Americans, including these specialized cultural and fashion, who knows what else has developed that we're just not in touch with. I'm always amazed when you discover new focuses that people have created. So my guess is once we get the policy stuff, and I'm hoping that it happens quickly because it's getting people there this spring and summer is going to make a big difference for the Cuban private sector. And it's also the kind of time that the larger scale tour operators and the cruises and other people need, and the university exchanges need a long lead time. So if they're going to be able to start operating next fall, they need to go ahead very quickly now for all that to happen. If there's anyone else who wants to speak in this format, yell out right now, because I'm going to shift over to the breakout rooms.
John, Greg Miller.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, Greg Miller from CREST, Center for Responsible Travel. Appreciate it. Some terrific comments. And I wanted to comment again and thank you, Angelica, for your really a pointed intervention. I want to underscore how important the urgency is of what we do from a policy and advocacy perspective. This is something that the door will be opening. Yes, there are some mega threats that the Biden administration is addressing, but I think we all want to be thinking about Cuba and responsible, sustainable travel and tourism in Cuba in the broader context of an America's strategy for the Biden administration. And because the US is going to be hosting the Summit of the Americas this year, I think what we want to be doing is underscoring how essential it is for them to start the clock that first few days in the new administration and start reversing the trends, and then building a broader array of more positive and longer term policies that can be built around themes that I think Biden will really embrace, like cross-cultural dialogue, cross-sectoral collaboration, and don't forget the all-important elements of climate change and the loss of biodiversity. I think Ed Lee, I'm sorry, I didn't catch Edward Russo, commented on that. Cuba is huge as it relates to the greater integrity of both natural and cultural resources in the greater Caribbean. And this is going to be something very important. The other thing from our perspective, I just wanted to underscore is that how important it is for all of us to ensure that we maintain a credible evidence-based approach to inform and educate travelers. There's too much certainly of, when we all know this, but sometimes we forget that and we get out ahead. And this is certainly something that at our organization, we're not a political organization, but we're really fact-based. And that's something that we want to continue to just reinforce and promote. So again, thanks everybody. Appreciate that opportunity.
Anybody else quickly to add in? Oh, Angelica.
I just wanted to ask if there was anybody that was on. Oh,
go ahead.
Nope. There we go. I just want to ask if there was anybody on the call that specifically works in academic, U.S. university academic programs.
Yeah, there are a whole bunch.
Yeah, so I'd love to collaborate because I know that.
Go into the university breakout room. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, great.
Okay.
Great. And thank you all.
All right. So before I go into the breakout rooms, let me reiterate that this will all be up on YouTube. We will make an effort to get it to the Biden people. And maybe they'll look at it. Part of what we're trying to do is convince them that there are real people out there whose lives and livelihoods will be affected by their decision. And it's not something to just put off. And also, as was said in the Ripe Fruit op-ed, that this is something that they can do easily with lots of popular support and a feeling that we're getting back to a more rational foreign policy. Any rate, what I will do is I'll open up the breakout rooms and talk through. Now, everybody is unassigned. Now, what do I have to do? Let me close it up again and go back to, it says allow participant to choose rooms. So
yeah, it came up when you did it last time. I saw
okay,
that.
but does it show you a list of rooms to choose from?
Yes,
or do
it
you
said join.
Okay.
You could choose which one you want to join.
Okay, I'm not seeing that. All I'm seeing is unassigned. I see at the bottom it's got, so you pick out one of those, scroll down to the bottom of it if you're seeing the whole list, and you just click on whichever one interests you. I think I've got somebody in each room that's gonna moderate it and help things get started and either take notes themselves or ask someone else to do it. What I'd like to get is a bit of a summary, a paragraph or two that we can share with everybody who was on the call afterwards. And that way you have as much time or as little time as you want. You can if you dry up, if you go make a round of introductions and that's the end of it, that's fine. But as you introduce yourselves to each other, that may lead to other conversations about what ought to happen now, what the kinds of problems are that have to get dealt with. One of the things we haven't touched on, I suspect it's because there still isn't much information, is how the economic reforms are going to affect travel. And there have been at least some stories saying that tour guides will be recognized as cuentapropistas, so they can function legally rather than covertly. And also that Cubans themselves can form small and medium enterprises in the tourism sector that can then partner with American small and medium enterprises in the tourism sector. But, I think it's just, we're waiting for that. So I will sort of slip around, dip in and out of the groups, but unless I hear from people through a chat that you want to come back together, I'm assuming that this is the end of the plenary session. And I wanted to thank everybody. We're very happy that two of our panelists from last time were able to join us. Rita and Bill, and there was obviously other expertise, legal and otherwise, as well as people's direct experience who were able to share. Whenever there is an announcement of a policy change, we will convene another discussion and go back to the whole list of the 400 or so and let people know about that. The moderators, I don't know how recording works within the breakout rooms. If you down at the bottom or top, if you have the option of recording, if you could do that, that would be great. But if you can't, if it's not, your notes should be sufficient. So I will hope to be in touch with all of you one way or another. Good luck. I see people now in the rooms. So everybody should just find their room and go to it.
John, I still don't see a breakout room option.
I'm sorry?
This is Cynthia Caraslanso. I still don't see a breakout room option.
At the bottom, do you see breakout rooms?
No.
4 boxes?
No.
I'm on a Mac. I don't know if that makes a difference.
I don't know about Macs. Do
No,
you
I don't
have
see it.
No.
Is there
I
anybody
don't
else
see
on a
it either.
Mac?
No.
Anybody else on Macs that can give guidance on that?
I have a Mac and I can see the breakout rooms.
You
John.
can see it.
No.
You can't see it either. Is there anybody on a Mac who can see it?
Hey, John, this is Shayla.
Hi.
Yeah, the button is on the bottom after the record button. There is 4 little squares and it says breakout rooms.
I just have reactions after record.
Yeah, me too. Just reactions.
Not sure. Maybe you need
I'm
to
on a
update.
PC and I don't see it either.
There was an update recently for Zoom, so maybe if you haven't
that's
updated,
true.
you might not be able to see it.
That's true. I should have told people to check they had the latest software. I mean, you can go off, update your Zoom and then come back on. And then you should see it down at the bottom.
Is it possible to send us a link to a breakout room?
No, you have to do it through the main entry point. So go out, update your Zoom software, and then go back in to the same link and you'll see it on the bottom, breakout rooms.
All right, thank you. Well, if I can't connect to the breakout room, I want to thank you so much, John, for organizing this and for getting so many like minds and people together. It's really wonderful to connect with everyone.
Well, as I said, this was a sort of experiment screwed up a bit by my effort to deal with the impeachment, which is still going on.
Well, these are crazy historic times. Let's hope that policy changes toward Cuba very soon, if not from Congress, then by executive order.
Okay, so
Thank
go
you,
ahead.
John. We really appreciate you.
Sure. Pleasure to see everybody again and to meet new
thank you,
people.
John.
Hey, Christopher, there's the Amanance Greece of tourism in Cuba. Christopher Baker from
My God, there's a time, John, when it was just you and I on the podiums back in the early 90s.
Right. If Chris' book is still my favorite tour book of Cuba, so.
And that's not he's not talking about the National Geographic book behind me, which I just updated this year. But alas, bad news, John.
Yeah.
I no longer, after 7 editions, I no longer write the Moon Guidebook.
Oh, somebody else is doing it, huh?
Yeah, we know what happens. The publisher got bought out by another one, and they look at their costs, and I'm too old and to earn too much from them. So they went for cheaper, younger blood.
Hi, Chris. I've been wanting to meet you. I used your book on my first trip in the early 90s. I've been when I met a Cuban and fell in love, and we've been married for 28 years, but I've been doing photography and books about Cuba since 1992 as well.
Oh, that's tremendous. Good to meet you, Cynthia.
Good to meet you. And for anybody that doesn't know, Chris and both Chris's, Chris Clunan, Chris Baker, and I, and a few others here write for Startup Cuba, which is a really wonderful new website that I encourage anybody that doesn't know about it already to look at, for lots of great information about Cuba, both currently and historic.
I may just pitch one of my little stories coming up for Startup. Those who don't know, in 1996, I shipped a motorcycle to Cuba and did 7,000 miles to research the Moon Handbook. So I have a 2-piece story coming out and Startup Cuba on the regional diversities I found in 96.
And I just wanted to share my book, A Taste of Cuba. So it's all my favorite paladars, and my favorite chefs shared their recipes with everybody. So you can cook Cuban here in the US.
Wonderful.
Awesome.
Okay, well, I'm gonna go tour through the breakout groups, and I hope you're able to find the way to get on.
Well, thank you again, John. Let's do this again. I think we should make this a monthly thing.
Let's see what the Bidens do.
And as I depart, let me say hi, Angelica.
Hi,
Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Not in the desert, but you know.
Well, next time in Havana, right?
Next time in Havana.
Yeah, we'll all get together in Havana.
I really look forward to that.
Everybody should plan to go to the International Tourism Fair in the beginning of May if you've gotten vaccinated. And, I mean, I think assuming that it's happening, we will set up a special event for Americans within it.
Great.
And it's a phenomenal, it'll be in Varadero this time. So, okay.
I know we could all use some beach time.
Yeah. For sure. Okay. See
you
you
next time.
Thank you.
Everyone. Bye-bye now.
Ciao.
Yeah, we're based mostly on the eastern section. We're talking about the Santiago, Guanamo, Baracoa, Holguin, all the way up to Camagüey. Not exclusively, we can do things in all over the country, but mostly personalized tours for groups with specific interests, which we base on, well, depending on the interest, that's the kind of tour program we work with. We've been working mostly, again, with the Casa Particular and, yeah, pretty much everything private.
Where are you located?
Santiago de Cuba.
Oh, you're in Santiago?
That's our...
No, but are you calling?
Yes, I am in Santiago.
Currently.
I'm calling from Santiago right now. Oh, yeah.
Joe, does your company your organization have a name?
Out of the Box Tours. It's the main hub. You can probably find us on TripAdvisor and a couple sites, and then you can Google us at outofthebox.zone.
So what is the name of your company?
Out of the Box Tours.
Oh, very good. Okay. Well, that's good to have as a contact. I think you put something into the chat. So
yeah, we've also worked as travel advisors. So anyone has a question of any kind, feel free to reach out.
Very good.
As I can leave. Yep.
Joe, do you do
Baracoa too? Can anyone hear me? Benita, it's Marla. I don't know because my photo's not on. Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
Okay, I just want to say thank you, Joe. It's I've been taking groups to Cuba for 20 years, and I go to the east end of the island once in a while, but I feel like I've got a new contact. So I'm Marla from Other Cuban Journeys, and I'll probably write to you just so you've got my contact as well. I'm happy to know you.
Marla, it's good to have you on board.
Okay, I'll put the video on. I don't.
There you are. Excellent. I'm still following you on Facebook. So
I know you write to me. I know it's great to see you, Benita.
are you ready to resume your religious tours? And
so, I mean, ready to resume until I feel comfortable with the COVID situation. No, I'm not about to take guests there. I actually last year was in a Cuban hospital for a week with dengue fever, and I know what it's like to be in a Cuban hospital, and I'm not about to expose my guests to it until I feel, heck, we're not even safe here in the US. And listen, I know things in Cuba are better than in here. I'm in touch with Cuba daily. I've got many friends there, even American friends that are married to Cubans, and I talk to them and I know what's going on. And even though things are maybe better than here, I'm not going to do it.
So you're waiting for the vaccines to be, everyone to have vaccines before you're ready to progress.
Right. And right now, until we know what Biden's doing, I mean, we can't be staying in hotels right now, until things are reversed. I mean, I can't take a group of 20 people and put them in casas. I need to be able to stay in my hotels. Right now, we've been in touch with Havana Tour, we've got our contract with Havana Tour. So I've been in touch with them and, been updated on what's going on at that end. And they don't, I don't want to say too much. Nobody really knows too much until it's opened up, until there's hotel pricing, until we can, start to request quotes.
I gotta shift over to another group, but Joe, one of the vastly underutilized opportunities in Cuba is Carnival in Santiago. I've been there several times myself and taken a group, and
it's quite an experience.
Oh, it's extraordinary. I mean, it's probably the best in the Caribbean. It's not known, and it's so well organized. And it's not just the display Carnival, but it's the in the neighborhoods Carnival that I would hope that a big effort.
That's where you get all the fun.
Yeah, to get a lot of people there. So at any rate, I should go off and say hello to other people, but thank you again, everybody.
And thank you, John.
Yep.
Thank you. I have a carnival tour. I didn't.
For you. So it's the Alliance for Cuba is our English Twitter.
Okay.
And that's our handle for that one. I want to make sure I'm giving you the right one. And then we have, I think we started a Spanish one also, because we really do want to do targeted work with not just Cuban Americans, but also Latinos. And
so he had me pay him, a percentage to insure me and provide letters saying that my guests could legally go to Cuba, blah, blah, blah. Turned out he never insured me because for my next tour, I said, something, I said, Michael, I want to see the documentation that you're actually insuring me. And he got silent. I hired a lawyer. My lawyer sent him a nice letter saying, Evan just wants to see the paperwork. Flipped out, stole money, made me sign a contract saying he could legally steal some of my money and wouldn't release the tour funds till the day before the trip.
What year was that?
Such a low life.
Was this pre-Obama?
No. It was last year. It was actually November was my biggest fashion show. It was last November, not this. Yeah.
Okay.
So then
Hi, John. I see you've joined us. You're muted though.
There we go.
You're still muted. No, there you go.
There you go.
I just wanted to ask you because I wasn't sure which group I was supposed to moderate. So I jumped into travel advisors since I sometimes wear both hats, but.
Yeah, I think it's complete. You guys should decide. There's about 6 or 7 people in the tour operators group, and you may want to just move over there or not. It depends how. I obviously did the moderating thing very late in the day, so. It's with 4 people, you're self-moderating. In any case, Evan, who was the low life that you were dealing with?
Oh, it's this awful guy. Hold on. His name is Michael Chinichi. He stole from me. First he lied to me and then he stole from me. All the bad experiences I've had regarding Cuba have been with 3 different people, all of them non-Cuban.
Yeah.
He's a really bad guy. He runs trips to Cuba. He runs a photo tour and he legit, he stole from me. He lied. He made me I gave him money because I thought he was legitimate to insure my tour. And then when I pressed the issue for my second tour, he wouldn't answer me. And then I got a lawyer involved. And then I was saying he made me sign a waiver saying he could steal part of my money because he refused to, he freaked out because he was a liar, you know?
Who are you? How are you organizing your tours since then? I mean, are you just putting them together yourself? Are you working with a company like mine or?
So what I did after that is I affiliated myself with Colin, you know, with CET. To run my trip because I wanted to, you know what, I didn't want to be responsible myself. I'm not a travel agent, you know, so yeah. I wanted, like, even though I was running everything on the ground myself, like everything, which, you know, also has its complications, people who try to steal from you, you know, when you're switching over your money. I mean, there's been so many things that I'm like, and I catch them, you know, thank God. But at least I think I do. But anyway, it's, you know, it's interesting. So now it's like, you know, when I do it again, do I do it with CET or do I do it with somebody else? You know, it's kind of like, well, what do you really need? Do you need insurance? You know, it's good for me to have an affiliate because.
So now that you have the experience of doing it, you know, I'll tell you this straight, and we can take this, we can just talk off, you know, we don't have to talk through this panel about this stuff. I mean, CET, you know, they're very reliable. They've been around. I've been doing it for 9.5 years. I think Colin's been, I don't know, John, you know him well. I think he's been doing it even longer than I have. So, you know, there are good actors and there are some of these, you know, people that are trying to take advantage of a situation where, you know, people look at Cuba as it's scary. It's the Wild West, so to speak, even though, you know, and, you know, what are the laws? What aren't the laws? The Treasury Department's involved and they can kind of move in and take advantage of people. Hopefully there's a lot less of those around anymore. I think there were more players like that in the early days when I first started getting involved than there are now. But yeah, I've heard many stories like this. People just trying to take advantage.
So Evan, are you in New York, Evan?
Yeah, I'm in New York.
And David, are you in Florida, Miami?
Yeah, so our operations is headquartered in Havana, of course. That's where the bulk of our staff is. We have 15 people there, but I'm based, the sales team is based in Florida. Yeah.
Oh, wow. I didn't know you were Florida. That's interesting.
But basically, I mean, you know, Evan, the key thing I think for you is you've got this niche, right? And with the fashion business, and there's as you already have seen, this is just the beginning.
I know
so many places you can take this.
Yeah, I know.
So I think the key for you.
Sorry.
I think the key for you is you should be focusing on what you do best, right? Which is the fashion shows themselves, those people, those connections.
Yeah.
And then have a good on the ground operator to run all the logistics.
That's what I need.
You can focus, you know, on the part that's the most important, right? I mean, that's the whole idea. But again, let's talk about it.
Yeah, we totally should, because
you may be in great hands with Colin and just stick with it. You know, it's not like I'm trying to move into that. But I'll give you advice from my perspective.
I'm going to go off and check into one of the other rooms. So
yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Nice
so
to
you
meet
guys will have this to yourself, or you can go into the tour operator one if you want to. Join that.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks, John.
Yeah.
So Cuba is one of the places I have not been, and I think the architecture, the history, the whole island intrigued me. And I was always interested in seeing something new and different. And so I got a friend of mine, a girlfriend of mine, and the two of us took off. And it was an extraordinary experience, just extraordinary. And I've become very close friends with the tour guide that I had. And
and I didn't necessarily, hi, John. It didn't necessarily mean, John, I was just saying that of some articles that I've read in the last 2 days about the state sponsor of terrorism designation. One, again, newspaper articles are not necessarily accurate. Referred to a list of things where it might have some effect, and educational travel was listed. It said, you know, most things it won't affect because it's already there, or, you know, under Obama before it was lifted, a lot of things occurred, but it did mention educational travel. And I don't know what that meant.
Yeah, that's really concerning, frankly, if that's the case. But I do know that for a fact that before, before Obama, even before Obama, and when Cuba was on that list, state sponsors of terrorism, that a ton of US universities were already engaging and going, right? And somehow they were able to get around that. So it would be interesting to find out, exactly what impact this would have on education this time around.
What I could say on that is, if you're in Florida,
yes,
if it's a Florida university, a state university, then it is a big problem because they've written a state law that says you can't use any state funds.
That's right.
For involvement with a country that's listed as a state sponsor.
Right.
That's the only state that's done that. Otherwise, what you're dealing with sometimes is the psychology of the legal department of universities,
right,
who are risk averse. And they went bananas when Cuba was relisted. Remember when it was at the top of the list of the dangerous places to go? That automatically triggered something in universities. I mean, it was no rational evaluation, it just was an automatic trigger. It also triggered things in private businesses. Somebody was supposed to go and his company wouldn't approve the expenditure. So I think that the general rule is, and if somebody's objecting to it, that they really need to consult a lawyer to get authoritative information about it. It's
what I recall is at that time when they went to category 4, very dangerous, that the problem was insurance companies, companies that insure universities. The lawyers got nervous or the insurance companies actually said that they won't cover students going to such a dangerous place. And that was where the problem was. Fortunately, our university where I work part-time didn't have that problem during that time, but because it sends students to all kinds of places. But maybe it might have some effect in that way.
So at what level is Cuba now? Is it at 3?
It's the same as a lot of European countries. It's that's one of the things that Trump people didn't change. It's it's not an insurance issue. It's not a legal issue at all in those terms. It's really the expenditure. We're back into the expenditures, OFAC stuff. And that I'm going to say I'm optimistic. I think that the Biden people will at least say something about what they're going to do. There may be some bureaucratic landmines that have been set to stop them from moving ahead as quickly as they want to, but I think politically they're going to want to do it. So.
Yeah, well, you're so right about the legal departments of universities being risk averse. I mean, that is so true. And they will actually, many of them look for ways to nix a program if there is any risk whatsoever, And so that is something definitely to be aware of. And I mean, hopefully the Biden people will reverse this. I mean, with what is it, 5 days left before the inauguration, and Pompeo, I mean, that it's a complete political move on his part for whatever reason. And I just can't imagine it would hold water for very long after all the Biden people come in.
Well, the general statement about it, which may or may not be true, is that the door opens easily in one direction. You can put people on the list, but to take them off the list, there's all kinds of procedures. But the Times story said that they were going to get it reversed. And I mean, I don't know whether they even could say that this is an illegitimate action by an outgoing administration. And we know if it was a Republican running the State Department, they'd just take an eraser. And
Right, right. Yeah. When did that story run, John? The New York
Yesterday's
Times story?
Times.
Yesterday? Okay, I'll go and read that. That's good to know. Well, you know, my plan, knock on wood, is to take another group in early 2021, I should say. Or no, not 21, sorry, 22. I'm still behind the times. I've lost a whole year, if you know what I mean. It's like, oh my God. And Jill, you as well. You were saying March of, right?
Yeah, we do it spring break in March.
Yeah.
We take students down for the springs. And this is all assuming, you know, it's okay with the Cubans. It's okay. I mean, there's so many
Right.
different factors, and that by then, I mean, one of the tricky things for a lot of universities is the decline in enrollment and economic challenges.
Yeah.
I know at Pratt, there was almost across the board salary cuts. All travel has been canceled.
Yeah.
Jill, we can barely hear you.
I'm sorry. Did it happen again? The audio settings. Oh, it happened again. I'm sorry. I keep setting the mic and it goes back and it goes back to some other position, and I'm terribly sorry.
Yeah.
No, what I was saying is that universities in general, except, you know, those with the biggest endowments, have had a lot of financial setbacks. Aside from declining enrollments just because there are fewer kids coming out of high school, where I work at Pratt, there was across the board salary cuts. A lot of activities were canceled for financial reasons, and all university sponsored travel was canceled and funding for it. So that will probably come back slowly, and also enrollments are down. Enrollments are down. So university finances are going to take quite a while several years to build back up. For the universities that survive, some of the small private liberal arts colleges aren't.
That's right. That's right. Well, you know, something you mentioned before that's been of great interest to me, and that is the reciprocal of bringing Cuban students to study in the U.S. And, you know, I raised that several times with the universities that I have relationships with in Cuba, including in Cienfuegos and Havana. And there's tremendous reluctance on the part of the Cubans to allow undergraduates to come study in the United States. They all said, you know, they're worried about the young people being somehow ideologically, you know, affected by doing that. And the closest I came in conversations I had with the Cuban was that, well, when they're older, so maybe graduate students, and also for certain fields. And for example, I couldn't imagine that the Cubans will allow a graduate student to come to UTEP to study journalism, which is what I teach, right? And so, I mean, that's a real barrier. And when things become more normalized in our relationship with Cuba and their Ministry of Education, I would like to see us on our part, you know, trying to make the case of why it's important for them to send students to our universities, you know, to be prepared.
Yeah, I think there are two factors or three factors. One is obviously political, that as long as the overall hostility exists, as long as there's an embargo and regime change, even soft regime change,
right,
Obama style, it's, you know, they're very nervous about it. But also, and this may just be a spin, but I was told that the Cuban university curriculum assumes you start it and you end it in 4 years, or whatever it is, 4 years or 5 years. But the thought of taking time to go somewhere else or do something else is not a conceptual possibility. You sort of have to work through that. The second thing is that as long as the U.S. law still exists, that allows people to stay, then the Cubans and the U.S. consular people are going to be very nervous about undergraduates going to the U.S., getting their degree, or even graduate students getting the degree, and then the day after they graduate saying, I'm staying and I'll take my 1 year subsidy.
Right.
So that's a second thing. The third is that I mean, I don't know that the Cubans would buy this. I just wrote something to a friend who's on the International Development landing team, transition landing team for Biden. And I said, and part of her responsibility, or that landing team's responsibility, is USAID. And so I said, you know, in the Bush administration, you had these programs left behind for the Obama, which included Zunzuneo and included, what's his name, the guy who got arrested and held for so many years. And they, first of all, I need to be sure that those similar kinds of programs haven't been left there for them to get the grief for. But also, I think if you say to approach Cuba the way it approaches Vietnam or most other countries, of vetting programs and having some buy-in from the beginning, then I would think you could do a really massive exchange program. I mean, the one cultural thing that's very similar between the two countries is this tendency to create professional organizations and professional meetings. You know, the Cuban list is as absurd as the American list is. Sort of the subdivisions and the thises and the that's, and if you could figure a way to really open the door, and it would start out with officially acceptable people, because that's what always happens, and people get rank privilege and all the rest of it. But over a couple of years, it becomes a doorway that people go for a week or a month, and they develop the kind of professional ties that are very, very important for the long term. And, you know, from a US view, ought to be seen as productive for the goals that we have of democratization. But if it's done in the right way, then, and you're respecting the Cubans' ability to control their own destiny, then I would think it's possible, but they'd have to overcome the nutcases in Congress on it. It's,
The other tricky problem is that while salaries in Cuba continue to be so low, a lot of young professionals just out of school, or, you know, with a little couple of years of experience, if they had the opportunity to come study in the United States, say for graduate school, there'd be a lot of incentives to stay, notwithstanding anything ideological, just because many of them would change, but they just don't feel that they can earn enough without having some side gig doing something else, and which wasn't the case before the special period to the same degree. I mean, a friend of mine's son just graduated from school in architecture, and of his class, everyone else was looking for a way to leave Cuba, to work somewhere else, because they didn't see a future for themselves there.
And you know, and that's something that the Cubans have to really look at seriously. I mean, the brain drain going on there. I remember hearing when we took the first group of kids under Obama, And, you know, we were bombarded with data, information from the government about the loss of intellectual manpower and the incredible aging of the Cuban population and the exodus of the young people. And they're really, really worried about that, which is another reason why, like you said, John, you know, no, they're not going to want to open up undergraduate programs for their students to come to the US to get a degree or to even to study for a semester or whatever. They're super, and rightly so. But then, you know, it goes to that they have to address that. And I think that they are beginning to do that, as painful as it is, with all of these economic changes and monetary changes that they're now doing. But once that embargo is lifted, I really believe it's going to be a whole new world for them. And there will be sources, outside sources of income coming into Cuba as well at that point. And but you know, they are rightly worried about that brain drain.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's the point I have made to them is Ireland has been suffering with that problem for 100 years.
True.
You know, you can't educate a population and expect that you aren't going to lose from an island economy.
Absolutely.
Especially one that's so culturally linked.
Yes.
But the coming back is the second part of the question. Right. And, you know, they have to make the changes that encourage people to come back. And that was beginning to happen. I mean, that was in the last year of Obama. People were beginning to think about putting their foot back in the water. And especially when the Cubans loosened up on the ability to return, that began to happen. And then, like everything else.
Yeah, no, you're so right. And there was a growing number of Cubans who were actually living in both worlds. Right. You know, they had an anchor in South Florida, but they had their anchor in Cuba, and they were going back and forth, and they were helping their families. And, you know, they were starting little businesses with their family members on the island. And because they love their island, they love the culture, they love, you know, where it is that they come from. And so that can also be whatever you want to call it, dual citizenship or whatever, an economic boon to Cubans to have people making that decision. I just got my Cuban passport, by the way. And I reclaimed my citizenship. And, you know, I don't know if I would ever go live there permanently, but I certainly can see living there for months out of the year.
Like, say, between December and February.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Even the summers, I don't mind the summers. I really don't, as long as you've got water nearby, you know.